Ziga, what do you make of the, deliberately I provoked a little bit, I put this word Kulturkampf on the table. Would you say that we are nowadays going through a Kulturkampf in terms of common values in the European Union, and that in a way the East is less progressive, more conservative, less liberal than the West? And what would that actually mean if that was true?
Thank you, Matej. It's a pleasure to be at this distinguished panel. Those of you who know me know that my basic education is in engineering, so I have this privilege of the child from the emperor's new clothing to question, doubt some of the foundational ideas that go around. And one of these ideas is, it was stressed very much by you, Matej, how important values are for establishing the European Union and so on and so forth. What I'd like to say here is that I think the concept of values, as used in the debates like ours, is actually abused. It's actually overloaded. It can be abused to create divisions, like you suggested in your question, between East and West, etc., etc. It can be abused to create unity, as in European Union. And what I will be humbly arguing, maybe not arguing, but sowing some seed of doubt in this community, is actually that these are not values that we speak about, and that they are not European. Not values, not European. Now, we are led to believe that values are something along the line of good and bad, right and wrong, virtue and sin, good and evil. But in fact, this is not the case. Values, as these European values, are in fact glorified ideological or political goals and principles, at least some of them: democracy, rule of law. This is political mechanism. This is a political choice. This is not something that there would be an intrinsic feeling within all of us, oh, not obeying the rule of law is bad as in the thou shalt not kill in the Ten Commandments. I'm not saying that these values are wrong or that these principles are wrong, but they are not values. They are political principles and they are political goals. The fact that we tell them values is that they're undisputable. We are not supposed to question that. We are supposed to bow to that, and we are also supposed to charge people with sinning if we believe that they are not bowing enough to these values. The real values are, of course, conceptualizations, abstractions of the moral intuitions, of our feelings of right and wrong, which have been shaped by the biological and by the cultural evolution. And about these real values, the map that exists in the world is actually quite well researched. There's a beautiful book by Jonathan Henrik about the WERIT people. WERIT as an acronym in Western, Educated, Individualistic, Rich, Democratic. The values, the culture, the instincts of these peoples are different than the instincts of the others. And if we speak about the European cultural differences or the differences in the real values, there's this World Values Survey that maps the differences in values, and they identified the Orthodox cluster, the Catholic cluster, the Protestant cluster, and the English-speaking cluster of the real values. And these differences, I think, these differences in Europe along these lines are much deeper and will run much longer than the differences between the liberal West and the illiberal East. Now, of course, values are in the very core of the European project. And there's a reason for that. I will quote from Habermas, and he wrote, "A nation is founded less on a shared lived tradition than on a set of indisputable values." So if you want to create a nation, you have to have values to base that nation on. So this is why there is usefulness of so-called values in the European project. There's another use for values in the European project, and this quote is from Friedrich Hayek. Planning or central direction of economic activity presupposes the existence of common ideals and common values. And the degree to which planning can be carried is limited to the extent to which agreement on these common scales of values can be obtained or enforced. So if you want a centrally directed, centrally commanded, centrally planned political unit, you have to have shared values of that unit. And if we manage to establish shared values in Europe, we can also create a more unified European continent. Are these values European values? Are these values Russian values? Are these values Albanian values? Are these values maybe also American values? I think it would be fair to speak either of Union values or of Western values or of Christian values. These so-called European values are product of reason, are product of intellectual analysis of what we believe should be done, like the rule of law and a few other things. And Alan Bloom says in the closing of The American Mind, reason cannot establish values, and its belief that it can is the stupidest at most pernicious illusion. So much about basing the European project on values. What can we base European project on? European project is about peace and prosperity. To achieve peace and prosperity, again, Hayek had actually a very good idea about that. He described that if you create common market plus a few things like common military and a few other things, in that paper titled Economic Conditions of Interstate Federation. Trading among each other, free trading among each other, will create peace and prosperity as the most valuable achievements of the European Union. And if we need something more to build the Union on, then I would say we should not be afraid of saying it is built on a common culture, not values. Culture, which is deeper, which has been evolving and developing for millennia, 4,000 years maybe. We should not be afraid of mentioning the term culture. Older civilizations were built on religion, then they were built on culture. Now we believe we can build them on the so-called values. Let's be careful, because values can be used to create an illusion of unity, and they can be used to create an illusion of disunity, as in your question about East-West conflicts. Let's be careful about how much we abuse the term values.
Thank you, Ziga. This is also provocative. He's trying to turn the table around. So we are not even, so there's no such thing as values, or neither there are European values, or it's about culture, or it's about interests, etc. I would be very happy to go along with you down this also semantic road, and etc., etc. But